Hello, everybody. This is Craig Renti, and welcome to the world's greatest podcast. I am happy, very happy today because we are joined by Rory Canavan. Rory, a lot of pressure on you today because you have to be the world's greatest podcast guest today. So I just want to let you know that.
Well, no pressure, and you'd be glad to know I have been exercising my vocal cords. So if we do hit that dead air moment, maybe I can burst into song or something.
I'll tell you, every time I talk to you, I get very nervous that your cars are going to fall off your shelves behind you because those tires make me very nervous. They make me
They
very nervous.
they're at a jaunty angle. That's how they haven't moved since I put them up there. So yeah, don't worry, they're perfectly safe.
I like that jaunty angle. It kind of reminds me of how people do compliance. We're at a jaunty angle with Oracle. So, Rory, thank you for joining us. For those that don't know Rory, he is the founder and CEO of Sam Charter and has been instrumental in getting ISO standards and helping companies and organizations understand and build SAM practices. So, welcome to the show. This is right up our alley. Technically, we're the world's greatest licensing podcast. I like to think we're bigger than that, though. So, you started on your own back in 2012. I started this company a year before, so 2011. So we sort of
Mm.
both been out on our own doing that. What gave you the push to do something on your own versus getting a steady paycheck from a big company?
Um, what I was seeing, or what I felt was a gap in the market, was that um, organizations back in the day, to make SAM go away, would think after the back of a off the back of an audit, we don't want to go through that pain again, so we will invest in a SAM suite, because the SAM suite will give us all our answers and fix all our problems, and we can carry on and move on to other topics in IT and get life better.
And clearly that
Um,
has happened, and the SAM suites have fixed everything.
it's a wonder I'm still in a job. What can I say?
I say
Yeah,
the same.
yeah. um, but there were still a lot of organizations who, having bought that SAM suite, were finding that they were still getting hammered with audits and hit quite painfully. Um, and it made me realize that actually what's the problem is not the spiriting up of information into a SAM suite to produce a compliance report. It's understanding, getting that data better, so that if you do have a terrible compliance report, there's no point in putting that in front of somebody in the C-suite and saying we owe 6, 7 figures to Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, etc., and expecting the director or VP to go, great, what do you want me to do about it? They're going to turn around and say, get that report better. And how you do that is by getting the data better. So you reduce the air gaps in your IT estate, and you do that through process. You don't do it through technology. You can do it through technology eventually, but you have to go through this. As I think the FinOps people like to talk about, crawl, walk, and run. So it's that thing of, if you try and automate a bad process, it's still a bad process. It just runs a bit faster. So I set about creating Sam Charter to create a body of work that I believed any organization could take and then customize and apply to their own unique circumstances. And in about 2015, I was at an event in London, and somebody from KPMG approached me and asked who I was. And I said, I'm Rory. I own Sam Charter. And she goes, oh, you're the process guy, which was really nice. And then she said, we used your processes.
Nice.
And hearing KPMG say they used your processes, for me, it was like hearing Ferrari had used my engine to win a Formula One race. Now, in fairness to KPMG, they hadn't, abused my IP. What they'd done is the client had bought version 1 of the process kit that I sell, and basically put it in front of KPMG and said, make that work. And that's what they did. So that was my sort of first sort of reassurance that I was doing the right thing and that I was on track with the messaging that I was trying to come up with through the
That's a nice
piece.
intro that someone is actually using your work.
Yeah, yeah.
Little company like KPMG.
Well, it's since gone on. I mean, since then, I mean, back in, what, about a year ago, we had a major engineering company that makes, amongst other things, vacuum cleaners. I'll not reveal the exact name, but you can I'll leave you to work out who that might be. But they'd outsourced their provision of Mac desktops to a third party. And by implementing the ham processors and actually interrogating the data around that, managed to uncover £2.5 million worth of fraud.
It's
So,
amazing. I remember you told me that story, and one of the things that we tell our clients, it's I think the worst thing is just not knowing, right? Whether you're
mm,
in compliance, you're out of compliance, you're optimized, you're not optimized. I just want them to know. Like that's the first thing. Just
yeah.
because then you can do something about it. If you owe someone some money, you can write them a check. If you can stop using it, if you can find the stuff, repurpose it. But the challenge is when people don't know, and I think that is uh, something that tech vendors use as leverage. They generally don't make it easy for people to understand
Yeah.
their position, and even if they did, you've got 100 different tech vendors. You're a big company. You're using 200 different vendors. You're never going to be in compliance with all of them at every single moment. It's never going to happen.
No, no, absolutely. And the evidence for that would be is how big is your Samurai Tam team, and what are they doing, and what are their primary goals, and if their primary goal is to remain license compliant 24/7, 365,
Good luck.
you need a cast of thousands to do it. Exactly. Yeah, you, because like you say, there are too many permutations across too many vendors to reasonably try and have in the head of one person, and or one SAM suite potentially. It's just too much of a challenge, yeah, to do that.
How many companies, fast forward 12, 13 years later, have you worked with, or have implemented and tested and learned and taken from the SAM charter?
Um, I would say it's got to be hitting in or around the 20 mark, at
Mhm.
least, and they've gone from sort of mid-range banks in the US to global banks headquartered here, there, and everywhere, to telecoms companies in the Middle East, to insurance companies in Australia. So there's a fairly broad stretch of organisations, and their engagement tends to be on how much they want to engage, how big their team is, how much they feel they can do themselves, with a
Mhm.
little bit of a nudge and steering and direction and what have you. So yeah, I love the variety of it, because typically the primary goals, the whys in all of this, why you want better SAM, why you want better ITAM, vary. And so for example, we had a major car brand over here in the UK. They didn't want their licensing to get in the way of their crash test scenarios, because if it did, it was the how it would sort of um, interrupt production, because if you haven't got the certificate, you can't produce the car, you can't sell the car, therefore we
Mhm.
have to hit the red button to stop the production line. So it's amazing how, there's an old expression my dad used to say, but for a nail the ship was sunk. And it's
I like
it's
that.
that license literally was the nail in that particular instance. So
Yes, you don't want to hit the red button on the production line for sure.
that's the last thing you want to be doing. And you don't want to be the SAM team to say, oh, yeah, we'll get around to that renewal eventually. You know,
So it sounds like there's no one industry. I mean, you mentioned banking, financial services. Obviously, they are very much into compliance. They're highly regulated, so they've got other restrictions. We'll see the same thing in terms of companies that come to us. A lot of banking, healthcare, uh, DoD, defense, things like that, which really need to keep the ship tight. Um, it's more of a vendor for us since we focus on one vendor. It's, the rules are the same for Oracle. Doesn't matter
Mm.
what industry you're in. So region, geography, they sort of all come to us. Are there any other patterns you're seeing, or is it just someone got hit by an audit and they don't want that to happen again, and then they call you? Is that sort of um, where your new customers come from, or is there another path where people find you?
Increasingly, particularly in the last couple of years, the white elephant in the room, or the elephant in the room, is ServiceNow. And so what a lot of organizations want to do is make sure their service management function can handle incident, problem, change better. And the way that service management hierarchy works better is having a quality configuration management database at its heart. You have to go through Ham and Sam to get that quality of data and information to understand which components are comprised of in a CMDB. So that, for example, you might have 2,000 enterprise edition installations in a given IT estate, but it's 75 of those that are mission critical to the IT services that are in the CMDB. And that's
Mhm.
not to say you ignore the other, what's my maths on that, 1,925 instances of Oracle, just because they don't have configuration item status. But you do focus on those ones that do, because they are the ones that are bringing in the money, or they are the ones that are answering the most urgent business and IT call requirements. Um, so so that's one angle that I've seen people sort of call upon my services. Another would be as well, um, is getting to a point, going into the FinOps world and the cloud world, is you're not so driven by compliance in the cloud, because you've already given your corporate credit card away, and at that point you're paying monthly, and it's based on whatever you've stood up and consumption. That's it. That driver has already happened. That has happened. What you're looking to do then is to understand that technology stack as it could be represented as an IT service in that CMDB, but in the cloud, and putting a TCO and ROI value against that technology stack. So if, for example, that technology stack is handling your payroll, it's very important to the business, because we want to make sure that people are paid and they do their jobs, but it's not bringing in revenue. So what's the cost benefit calculation that you put on that technology
Right.
stack, versus if it was an e-portal that was Amazon like, you could say, well, it costs us X, but it's bringing in Y dollars. So it's an easier calculation to make, and then to try and optimize that. So that's
You brought up ServiceNow, and they're an interesting one because, a lot of our clients obviously have ServiceNow. And for years, we just helped customers with Oracle. Now we've expanded and now we're doing more. But one of the first vendors we were asked to help sort of fight was ServiceNow.
oh
I
wow.
guess, yeah. So here you've got this platform that's built for compliance, tracking, measuring, and people are implementing it. And then 3 months later, they got the knock on the door. Hey, you're using too much. You owe us a lot more money. It's amazing. Like, I was like, how is that possible? It's cloud platform. It's got to be locked down. You're using too much. It is literally built for compliance. And, good on ServiceNow. They figured out a way to use compliance to generate more revenue. So
Mm,
I think this idea that every cloud vendor is a little different how they implement their software. It's basically just software in someone else's computer. It's all it is. And, some vendors have, we have some vendors where it's completely locked down, right? If I want to use one more seat, I need to call them up or go on their portal and unlock a seat. Other vendors have it wide open, and you use all this stuff and then you sort of figure it out later. It's the on-prem model, but it's just in the cloud. So I think, every SaaS vendor will be looking at that shortly. Like, do we really want to lock it down? Maybe it'll help us if we, open up some functionality and, when they click on it, it says, make sure you have a license, and then they just start using it. Like I don't think audits have been so profitable on the on-prem. I don't think SaaS companies, because they're all software, they just moved to on, now that it's somewhere else, but they learned a lot by doing audits. So I don't think compliance challenges are going away just because you're in the cloud.
I don't think so. I think it's couched slightly differently. It's not. It might not necessarily be that thing of accessing services you don't have rights to access, which to me would be non-compliance in the cloud. But it would be, shall we say, accessing a service that is all bells and whistles, for which you only need read and write access to data that service might provide. And I tell you what, Microsoft played this trick so well with their branding around Office and their associated products many years ago, in that they talk about products being standard or products being professional. And if you were to put an equivalent title in front of any individual working in an organization, well, they say, well, I am a professional. Why wouldn't I have professional and probably pay twice the cost for picking a product with professional on it rather than
Right.
standard?
Right.
So yeah, I think Samurai Tam has an absolute role to play in SaaS, and that is to spot opportunities for rationalization, spot opportunities for version control as well, and making sure that you're on the right version to do the right job.
Right.
And that can too often get missed. And also then at that point with SaaS, the other issue with SaaS particularly is around levers. I guarantee companies will be drum tight on knowing when somebody is working their last day in the HR department and payroll sections,
Yes.
but they won't be quite so hot in IT to close down access to software, but also the data as well. And I think this is another sort of warning bell for organizations who are a little bit sort of air gappy in their IT management. Is it's not so much a case of compliance that you should be using as a stick or a carrot to guide people in how they operate, but rather, will that software grant access to data that is worthy of protection from a personally identifiable information bracket, or is confidential to this business and can offer competitive advantage? And that's part of the ISO standard as well. We look to identify that, so you can put extra bells and whistles around your software if it does grant that sort of access.
So we're definitely seeing companies, if you want to call it over provisioned. They bought the highest level and they don't need the highest level. We see that all the time, but we are also seeing companies. It is a matter of using functionality you're not licensed for. So
Mm.
again, if I had a SaaS company, that's what I would do. I'd open everything up. I'd say, here's your license is for these three things, and I'd have access to six things on the website, and I would have it say, make sure you have a license before you use this, and then I would get them hooked, and then I would come in later and once I could, because now I could see that they're using it. It's in the contract. It's up to you to make sure that you are compliant. Now that I see that you're using it, I might not necessarily go all Oracle on them and charge them
Mm.
back support, but I might say to them, if you want to keep using that, you got to pay for it starting today, or stop using it. Like, you could do it in a nice way. So it's a way to get customers interested in your product or service. So I wouldn't be surprised. And then when those companies are stretched for revenue, then they come in with the hammer. Hey, we saw you turn this on 6 weeks ago or 6 years ago. I don't see I mean, there's no downside to doing that other than you might have a pissed off customer for a little while. But obviously they were getting value from it. So I always, I'm looking for that, and we've actually seen it. There's thousands of SaaS providers, and some of them are doing it that way. So it's definitely not the norm though. But I'd watch that space, because I think everything is shifting. I mean, as we're recording this, yesterday our friends at Oracle announced earnings, and they actually missed earnings if you looked at the Q1 numbers, but their projections on their cloud spend is ridiculous. Their stock was up almost 30% overnight. And, Larry Ellison is almost the richest man in the world again. It's been a long time. He was way down to like number 15 for a while, but, and they're obviously moving in the direction of, put it on OCI, put it in the cloud, AI, everything and all that. Um, how has, um, how has AI impacted your organization?
Um, my organization personally, not a great deal. However, I can see an application where AI could be used in SAM, and it led me then to dust off some slides from university. I was lucky enough a lifetime ago to do some studying around artificial intelligence, neural networks, and neural networks are the heartbeat of how large language models and machine learning takes place. Um, so that resulted in me writing a paper, and I'll give you the thrust of it now so that, oh, excuse me, just moved the laptop there unwittingly. The idea is that you have this neural network and the input layers are the actual processes that you get set up. So if you can imagine you've got, I don't know, 30 or so sound processes bouncing around your organization, what you do is you feed that KPI data through a neural network. And then at that point, ultimately, you've got a rules-based engine at the top of it saying what good or bad SAM looks like. So you've got backward propagation from your operations and what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and how those KPIs can then influence your strategy. Are you delivering on your strategy through your processes? And if you're not, then you can adjust the data and adjust the weightings within the neural network. Or you can re-engineer the processes. You can make things better that way. So you've got your forward propagation then at that point as well. I hope I've got the forward and back right in that definition. Um,
It's beyond me, so we're going to trust that you did. But it's obviously so. We did a podcast a few weeks ago where we went into some AI bot and started asking it questions around SAM, software asset management and licensing, for example. The vendor requests that I send them the spreadsheet with usage. Should I do it? And the answers that came back, because it's for the most part learning from vendor websites, it's like, great, absolutely, you should. Vendors are there to help you. I'm, sort of, putting some mustard on that story, but that is the gist of what that came back with. So, how close are we to someone going into Grok and saying, design a SAM program for my organization, hitting the button and there it is. I mean, I think we're a ways away from that.
I think there's a lot of layers and context as well, and let's not forget as well, if you pick an engine like say ChatGPT, you've got those three tiers of membership as well. So you'll get a service level skim at the free level, and then the paid level you'll get a bit more, and then the enterprise level you'll get even more. It's always learning as well, and I think as of right now, it's still learning. It's still learning. So to your point, what would be quite interesting, Craig, is if you go back in 6 months' time, and I think also as well, you've got to be respectful of the AI and ask the question from a perspective or point of view. Because if you worked for Oracle and you got that answer back, you'd be very happy. If you work for Palisade Compliance or Sam Charter and put that in, you'd kind of say, pump the brakes there, hang on a minute,
Yeah.
don't immediately follow that guidance. So there's context to everything, I think. And I think just pinning your thought faculties on ChatGPT, or other AI engines, and just sort of giving up thinking is the absolutely worst thing you can do. And I wouldn't just say that of Sam or Item, I'd say that of life generally. You can't you can't just give up, frankly.
We were getting those answers and I was torn because part of me, the decent human being part of me is like, this is really bad advice. I never want people to follow this. But then
Yeah.
the business person is like, you should do it.
Yeah.
Send the vendor everything. They are going to screw you so bad. You're eventually going to come to me. This is great. It's like setting a trap.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I got the good angel and the bad angel, on my shoulders. I don't know. It's tough. My family's got to eat. It's,
I just want to touch as well, Craig, on the wider aspect of AI as well, and the governance around it, because it's Martin Thompson's doing some very useful work in the ITAM forum, and I think
Mhm.
it's worthy of a shout out, because obviously AI is accessing data, it's self-learning, or it's attempting to self-learn. So putting those boundaries on where it can go to get that information, where it's potentially storing data, which is a cloud issue anyway, that's important. Um, at what point do you hit pause, or thanks, we've had enough. We know now where to go because of AI. Um, all of these aspects around governance and control of AI, and equally AI is software, but it's software that does something quite a bit different from any other software that we've seen before.
Right.
So it still needs managing at the end of the day.
We've literally just started experimenting with usage, and I think I actually attended a conference yesterday with the World CC, World Commercial Contracting Organization. It used to be the IACCM. The NCMA was there. All these contracts organizations, and they were obviously talking about AI because one of a great use case for generative AI is dumping a lot of contracts in there and asking it questions. And they were saying, prompting is going to be a skill, and you have to think about it right now. You're working with a very uh, how do they say it? Passive aggressive teenager. So it's going to answer the exact question that you asked, but you have to really follow up and you'll develop your prompts. So it was interesting for me because I'm listening to really large organizations. KPMG might have been in the room, um, as a matter of fact, and where they started with AI is NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, right? Have your prompts, tell me, and that's where we started. I was like, oh, okay, that's yeah, I still got it. And now last week we started using it. I said, listen, small little company, we may have 10 tech vendors. Let's put all these tech contracts in one central location, and I'm going to start asking our, closed loop AI tool some questions like, when do these contracts expire? How can I terminate them? Uh, is there a price increase? And it was really interesting for me, because it touches on FinOps and SAM and compliance, and then now I can in one central place see all these things without having to buy a suite, without having to sort of have a CLM tool, a contract lifecycle management tool. I can just start at again, we're a very small company, so we're not talking 50,000 contracts. We're talking 20, and I think it works great, right? So I definitely encourage our clients if to use these tools as long as they're not sending it out into the ether, so people can see your contracts. It's not learning from your contracts, but I think it's in the contracts world, it's going to be transformational. I think and perhaps someone will figure out a way to have some prompts to say, tell me where I'm most likely out of compliance. Here's my vendors, here's my business model, here's my whatever. Tell me where the fires are. And maybe there'll
Yeah.
be that someday. But someone then is still going to have to investigate whether there's an actual compliance issue there.
Yeah, I think where I'd love to take those questions as well is, you could start getting company profiles of companies that have been hit by vendors. Why are IBM coming after? What are the top 10 companies that IBM go after, for example? What characteristics those companies have? Where does my company profile fit compared to them? Um, so that if you did want to get strategic, maybe on your prioritization of software vendors that you're going to handle moving forward, it's not just a case of putting a finger in the air and thinking, okay, um, who audited us further, most far away. We'll put them top of the list because they're going to swing back round fairly soon.
Hmm.
and doing it in sequence of the audits that you've been through. Um, yeah, just so you can target your resources, because again, you're going to be fine out with your SAM and ITAM teams. You're not going to have that
So
limited
what's
budget.
next for Sam Charter? What are you guys working on now? What can we see coming down the pike?
So down the pipe, a few things. We've just augmented the SAM and ham process kit. So what we did with the kit was we created a RACI chart. The modeling framework we use is a framework called ARIS, and ARIS gets you to call out the stakeholders at each function step. And so having done that, we created a RACI chart, which is, granted it is template, but it gives you a very clear idea of the expected departments that we would believe step in at various levels in a process. So the next thing we did then at that point is ARIS also gets you to model the data going in and out of the function steps. So we created, if you want, a RACI chart for data. So that if, for example, you're talking to procurement and procurement say, we really don't care what you're doing in ITAM, but we would like appreciation or sight of what you're doing with our contracts, rather than wading through 32 processes and trying to find where contract appears, you've got a slicer that you can just click on and go contract. There's the processes, there's the function steps. This is what we're doing. The other use case then would be if information security knocked on the door and said, okay, you're building this ITAM framework, tell me where you're creating your entities. So at that point, you can click on create and all the entities appear in a heartbeat, and you can go, there you go, InfoSec. There you are. That's what we've done via process. That's where you need to interrogate who is creating it and do they have the authority to create things. So that's majorly powerful, but we're also working on the equivalent process kit for cloud as well,
Hmm.
which I equated to, when I started, I thought, well, this will be a quick lift and shift from SAM and there won't be that much difference. But again, research, education, all of that thing, yeah, it's quite a bit different. It's the difference, I would argue, between speaking French and German. They're both languages, but they don't sort of they don't sync 100%. So we're about 80% done on that. We've got an ecosystem, so we've got one big sheet of paper showing how all the processes talk. We've just about completed the tracker. We've completed the RACI. We've completed the process maps. We first drafted the verbiage. So one thing that people who are listening to this may not be aware, we don't just sell the 30,000 feet processes and say, good luck. There is supporting text as to what should be taking place at each of the function steps. So there's a write-up on the process too. And we're in the middle of getting that peer reviewed. The point at which we get the feedback from those peers in the industry and make the final tweaks is when we're done. And I can't wait, because it's been a long
How
experience.
many people get to have input on this? What's the size of the group?
So I think we've got about 30 people offering peer review. And one thing we wanted to make sure is that we didn't just sort of send out the kit, in toto and say, please review, because then we'd get the first 20 pages would be excellent, and the remaining sort of 160 would just not get looked at. So we've divided it up amongst a body of people to say, can you look at this bit, and you look at this bit, and you look at this bit. So we're getting eyes across all the kit rather than just the first 20 pages.
Got it. Got it. I mean, having worked at a really big company with, had 1,200 people working for me, now a really small company, process is so important and so important. Even at a little tiny company like ours, when I think about our sales process, and marketing gets involved here, and then it goes to the salesperson, and then it has to go into finance and contracting, and then the delivery team. But you've got to keep the salesperson involved at the same time, and finance needs to be up to date when delivery. It's just, and then you sort of start doing stuff, and then you realize we have a process, we just haven't written anything down. probably a good idea to start writing this stuff down. And I don't care if that's, and it's tough work, man. It's tough work nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to sit down and say, okay, now you send an email to this person and then let's, and at Oracle, we had and I think you mentioned this much earlier in this talk, automation was the end. It was
Yeah.
simplify, standardize, centralize, automate. I think that was the order. And we would go into customers and say, listen, we sell the automation, but that's the last piece. Like, don't take a crappy process and then try to automate it, because now you're going to have, like I think you said, a slightly faster crappy process. Why are we doing this? Again, in that other session I was at yesterday, they were talking about, looking at contracts from a compliance standpoint and saying, hey, we've got the standard boilerplate language and we always give it away and it's never been a problem. Why are we doing that? But let's just take that out of our boilerplate so we don't have friction in our sales process. How do we keep, obviously we can always make sure we're 100% in compliance if we don't use technology, right? If you shut it down and you're in compliance, how do we balance risk and opportunity and go to market? And how do we make sure that SAM and governance is a springboard for the business that the organization is in versus a roadblock to utilizing technology?
I think that's a great question, and I think we're going back to that thing of why it's demonstrating the value of doing things right. You don't just want to be the bad news department that produces compliance reports too
Bad
close.
news department. I like that. Oh my God. Hi, this is Craig Ritty. I'm coming to you from the disaster section of the bad news department. Your Oracle unexpected bill. Love that. That's
Yeah, it's that thing of, say for example, you have produced that compliance report that looks absolutely awful, and is highlighted over deployment. For example, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Well, if we're too close to a contract renewal, we've got to suck it up and we've got to spend. This is the declaration we have made or are making. So at that point, it's looking at the life cycle. It's reverse engineering. Well, how did we arrive at this position? And at some point, somebody will have asked for it. So we go back to the request. At some point, somebody will have gone to procurement and said, I need an installation of certain, this shopping list of software. Somebody will have given that an endorsement. Thirdly, somebody will have taken that list and gone, yeah, I can deploy that software for you, no problem. And in that bad use case triangle, the due diligence is missing. Somebody somewhere along the way has turned a blind eye because we don't want to get in the way of the creatives. We don't want to get in the way of the business making money. Well, if you're not careful, that attitude is going to cost you money.
right.
So I always like to assign fiscal values to processes because everybody speaks money.
That's a great point. So how do we do that here? What's the ROI? How do we measure?
Exactly, and it depends. It depends on the process, because if you're talking from a strategic point of view, for example, you might have a process that creates an ITAM policy, and for all the world, you might think, well, how would we assign a fiscal value to that? Well, that policy it governs a scope or a boundary. So at that point, you could argue all IT assets in scope. And what you watch for is you make sure that as purchasers come in, that they are included in that scope, that they are onboarded, they are correctly managed. So that if you do buy a new piece of software, is it on the supported software catalog? Has it been tested? Has it been approved? All of those kind of things. Is it brought under management of the ITAM policy? Anything that sits outside of that then is your potential risk against not having reviewed the policy and reviewed the scope that is applied to it. That's at a very high level. From a more operational level, you could look at the request process. And this is a favorite example of mine. Because technically it sits under request fulfillment for service management. Service management might have a KPI of time taken to honor the request. because nobody wants to wait for software. And that's a laudable goal. InfoSec might have a KPI of the number of requests that were honored that were not on the supported software catalog. And they're shooting for a 0% because they don't want software being approved for purchase or deployment if it's not already gone through onboarding and due diligence and arrived at that catalog. SAM, you want to be looking at the cost or quantity of requests that have been honored by the license pool in the last 30 days. So we go back to the shelfware that we've got and we see if the request comes in, it could be honored by shelfware, ding.
Right.
Sam, that is the gift that keeps on giving. Yes, fantastic. We're drilling down on stuff that's not deployed. So when you have those fiscal values and you've got them dotted around the life cycle, all of a sudden, ideally, if I could reach out, if I could be the CIO of a given company, I'd say, right, this is what we're creating. All those processes are going to be reported, and they're going to report fiscal KPIs. So we're going to have a view for the IT estate overall, and then I'm going to hit a drop-down button, and then I'm going to pick Microsoft, then I'm going to pick Oracle, then I'm going to pick IBM, and I'm going to sub-filter that data based on vendor.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my dear wish. And you can see the life cycle then, the way we have the processes plotted on the ecosystem, you've got all these little flashing numbers. You can subdivide by vendor and you can see, well, this is where we stand with given vendor. And because I've seen it too often where organizations start with Microsoft because they argue that it's the simplest licensing framework to manage, because they start at the desktop and work up, and that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. But because they believe they've got a handle on Microsoft, they then, by extension, think, well, we're okay with IBM. We must be fine with Oracle because we're doing, we've got Microsoft. Not the case. Not the case at all. So I would think that if you had that kind of a dashboard that I described, that would leap out at you fairly quick. All those green lights for Microsoft would turn amber or red if you weren't applying the same controls to the vendors then.
And that just goes back to, for me, when the Department of Bad News approaches, when we work with a client, it doesn't matter what vendor, the best thing I can do for them is give them a red, yellow, green.
Yeah.
And then an answer, how to take advantage of the green, how to, make the red yellow, how to make the yellow green, wherever they want to go. But for me, that's often, when we're brought in is we don't know. Like we've got, if a client knows they're out of compliance and sort of was caught red-handed and the vet, maybe they want some help negotiating a better deal. That's a challenge when you don't have leverage. But it's the unknown here. So Rory, if someone wanted to get some more information, see a little bit more about what you guys are doing, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
So I'm always on LinkedIn, so I spend too much time on LinkedIn for one thing. So please reach out to me that way, or if not LinkedIn, then the samcharter.com website. You can always email me at info@samcharter.com, because if I give my name, it'll just be too convoluted. I get all the info, email addresses, so by all means send it to me that way. We've got loads of resources on our website. So my apologies if I lost people trying to describe a neural network. We've got a very nice image in the white paper that explains all of that. We've got 3-minute videos on why you should do SAM as well. So like that triangle that I described, I call that the Bermuda Triangle of SAM. And we've got an explainer video on said Bermuda Triangle.
Just
Yeah.
set it and forget it, man. Just do it and then don't worry about it. You'll be fine.
It's easy. Yeah.
It's so easy. What is the next I was looking at the cars behind you. Those are all Lego sets, right?
Yeah,
When's
yeah.
the what do you work? Are you getting that? There's like a new $1,500 Death Star that has come out for Christmas.
I think I saw that and I nearly cried at looking at the number of pieces that it was getting put together. However, I'm a little bit obsessed with the Formula One. So until they bring out a fifth car. Right now, I've got 4 of 4,
Hmm.
and my God, they do these little ones as well. Whoops.
Oh, geez. Oh my God. That's, talk about the department a bit. Let's see it. Come on. Is it in pieces?
Disaster. It's lost its
Uh,
front wing.
uh,
Somebody's clipped it there. Um, that is well. I mean, I guess it's good for the podcast if nothing else. However, that was given to me by the SAM manager at Williams Racing.
nice.
He
Nice.
was very kind to say that, and I will drop it round to you because it's the smaller model. I'm not so much into the smaller models, but it's still quite fiddly to put together. Um, but he dropped it round and I said, thanks very much. What do I owe you? He said, no, nothing at all. He said, based on all the help and support you gave me when I was at my former post, I wouldn't be where I am today without it. I was like, stop it. You'll set me off. So that was really kind of him. So I did build that particular one, but I'm not looking to collect the smaller ones.
I think my favorite client to visit was Mars, the candy company. Their
Oh
office is here
yeah.
in New Jersey. So we would go to their site, and when you walk in, they have this big sort of box with all candy, like, and not the little candies, but the big candies. And they had boxes of candy, like different, like assorted packs of things that they, weren't widely in production, that they were texting and that they were testing. And I would tell the teams, like, we have to go on site. For this one, like, well, we were just there last week. No, 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 we need to have this. Why do we need them? Because it's 2 miles away from my house. It's like they have candy, so I need to be there because I can't find that candy anywhere. And my kid was like 5 years old at the time. He's like, Dad, we need that candy. I was like, all right, we're gonna do that. But you should get Lego as a customer.
I would dearly love that. So I'm just picking up a piece here before I tread on it, which is always the worst. Um, the nearest I got, I did briefly have a chat with the procurement people at, I think was it McLaren? I think it was McLaren, and that was like another world because you got checked in at the reception, and then they say just walk down this column. You'll come to a white elevator stroke cylinder. Get in it, and they'll meet you at the reception in the building. It was the nearest thing to a James Bond experience I've ever been in my life, because you stepped into the lift and then it just went black, and then the lights around the circle on the floor lit up, and they got brighter and brighter to the point that you arrived at the reception, and you just like, oh, I'm spaced. Yes, take my kidneys, my money. I don't care.
Whatever you want, it's
And
yours.
you go in, they see you in, and then obviously they walk you down these stairs. There's a big lake in front of every of you there with this massive amounts of clear glass that is obviously cost a fortune, and then all these Formula One cars from days gone by.
You
And
must have been in heaven.
I was blown away. And the lady in question, I was saying, the first thing she said to me was, "Just want to let you know, there's no business here." And I was like, mentally, I was going, "That's fine. What the hell am I doing here?" So that was all right. And then I said, "Do you mind if I take some pictures of the cars?" And she said, "You're welcome to." She said, "providing you don't put them on social media." And I was like, "Well, what's the point of that? I can't brag about being here if I can't put them on social media." So yeah, that didn't happen either. Um, but yeah,
That's
that would have been
that's
a nice gig to land, I'm sure.
that's funny. Well, I'm just excited that we're starting to get out again. We're not all sitting in the house all day, sort of working from home. So customers want to meet and greet and see people. So, and I think that I see the effects of companies having suboptimal SAM practices and vendor management practices. So I know some of our clients have used your services and they've been really happy. So I encourage anyone who is looking to make their SAM program better or their cloud compliance program, sort of get when you release that, make sure you spread the word and get it out because that is a hammer that there's plenty of nails out there for sure.
I'm really looking forward to it being launched. Just so can get away from Visio for a day or two, really, more than anything else.
Well, Rory, thank you very much for being on the show. You definitely have been the world's greatest podcast guest today. So we appreciate that. We appreciate your work. If anybody wants any more information, go to the Sam Charter info at samcharter.com,
That's
right?
the one.
Excellent. And if you like this podcast and you want to see more, please like and subscribe and tell your friends and neighbors. And there's thousands of people who are waiting for this episode, Rory. So get ready.
I'm just glad we didn't have that dead air moment where I had to burst into song. So life is good.
No, it's all good. You were great. Thank you again. And thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next time on the world's greatest podcast.
Bye bye.